welcome to another episode of Full-Time Banter. My name is Daudi Mugabi, and joining me today is MJ. MJ, the last time we spoke, we were going to play our second game in the AFCON. We're all a bit disappointed about Ghana, but we thought that perhaps the boys would pull through. And now it's all over, as we had initially predicted. Although we finally had something to celebrate in the last game, at least we had a goal, something for the fans to savor. So MJ, what were your views on this particular game, as well as our overall performance in the tournament? And then maybe we can circle back to Badi's problem of having been there and done that, now what?
I'd like to add a note of correction. You say that we all expected 3 games. I didn't. And you say that we were optimistic for the Egypt and Mali games. I was, you were not. So the events have turned out as you predicted. So congratulations to you, I suppose. I don't know how happy you can be about seeing Uganda fail. But you asked me what I thought of our campaign on the whole. I think on the whole, what we saw is that there was a good and a bad side to this. Mm-hmm. The good side is that we saw how small the gap is between ourselves and, if I might term them, at least Egypt and Ghana, the best teams in the continent. The gap really is as small as Isinde's mistake or Walusimbi switching off. So we're close. I think that should give us some sense of optimism. On the bad side is that the coach, I think, has taken us as far as we can. It's bad for us, bad for him, because though I'm not a fan of his, he has done a good job. But I think the time has gone part ways. And I say that because what failed us in this tournament were the tactics. I think certainly Mitchell can point to technical inefficiencies, technical incompetence. That really can be put down to him. It's more what Badi spoke of, the coaching at a young level. That AFCON isn't going to change that, at least not directly. But the tactics are very much within Mitchell's control, and for that I think we can hold him accountable. And if you look through the 2 decisive games, that was Egypt-Ghana. The Mali game was played in an unusual spirit because we didn't need to win. We were out, so we played without fear. But the games where there was something on the line, where we expected us to put up our best foot forward, I would say the tactics were what cost us both games. I mentioned before my views on why we lost against Ghana, but let me summarize again. The key thing to note in that Ghana game, of course, was the individual error of Isinde. But if you watch carefully, there's something else that strikes you about that Isinde error. When he miscontrolled and lost the ball, when he turned around, the Ghanaian player was in on goal. There was no other Ugandan defender near him. And I suspect that was part of the reason that Isinde panicked, because he knew, oh goodness, I've set up this guy for a goal. Let me do whatever I can to rectify the error. Contrast that with the Egypt game, where on the 17th minute, Mia miscontrolled the ball and gave it straight to Salah. Salah turned to shoot, but in front of him, the 3 Ugandan defenders who blocked the shot. It's not surprised that Mia didn't try to tackle Salah, because he could see with his own eyes that there were still teammates in a position to bail him out. So the question is, why against Ghana was nobody near Isinde, but against Egypt there were? The answer, the coach. Because it's simple enough to tell a team, when you send them out in a defensive pattern like you did against Ghana, make sure that you keep a low line, low block, and that you defend in numbers, be compact. We were compact in the first half against Egypt, the way we're not compact against Ghana. That's on him. It's not due to the players, because the players showed quite clearly that when they're given instructions, they can execute them. So I put that down to the coach. Yes, Isinde made an error, but that error in of itself was not the key factor. The key factor was the fact that Isinde was isolated in that moment and received the ball. Against Egypt, Walusimbi made an error, but if you recall, what's initiated the play from which Egypt scored was Ochoa getting the ball around the halfway line, looking to play the ball forward and losing it. Ball goes to Egypt, 3 passes later they scored. But that's with 5 minutes to go. Why is Ochoa trying to pass the ball forward? If I may give the example of Italy, who we in Uganda all think of as defensive masters, whenever you've seen Italy in a game where there are 5 minutes to go, they're drawing and they know a point is the bare minimum, whenever you've seen Italy try to attack, or even not try to attack, but lose the ball and not have 10 men behind the ball. When the Egyptian pass came into Salah, the farthest back Ugandan defender was Walusimbi, and he was literally on the edge of the 18-yard box. If it were the Italians, the furthest back defender would be with Onyango. The next one would be at the edge of the 6-yard box, and the rest would be on the penalty spot. So that by the time the Egyptian player takes the pass from Salah and tries to shoot, it would hit 8 bodies. That again is Mitchell not thinking it through. The defensive discipline broke down the longer the game went. It was probably a result of when we saw the Egyptians wearing, we got confident, we started attacking. But again, it's down to the coach to calm the players down, make sure they keep the defensive organization, and when the 10 minutes to go, accept there's not going to be a win here, get the point, because with 1 point game against Mali, if we beat Mali, we then finish on 4 points and would be level with Ghana. Now, granted, because of the nature of the Ghana-Egypt result, we still would have gone out because Ghana would have a better head-to-head record with us. But again, you can see what I mean, that in both games, it was Mitchell's failure to produce the defensive organization. Ironically, that defensive organization was what stood out in the qualifying stages. But for some reason, he was unable to reproduce it on the bigger stage. And so when people talk about stage fright, I don't think it was the players who got stage fright. It may have been Mitchell. This being his first national tournament, that he was unable to produce the defensive organization we needed. The second thing I'd say is that, at least in the first 2 games, the team he picked was inconsistent with the tactics he played. So, best example is Egypt. Against Egypt, we were actually quite offensive, but he played Ochoa and Walusimbi. Now, normally when you're going to play an offensive game, you want to play players who can improvise and make the most of opponent errors. Ochoa, for all his strengths, is not such a player. Neither is the 4-man central midfield he picked. We literally had only 2 attacking players that game, Massa and Mia. Why couldn't he have played the same team he played against Mali, where he had Mia, Chiziluaga, and Oloya? Those are 3 players who know the way to go. They can combine, they can pass, and you saw it against Mali. I think the best example was the glorious pass from Mia that put Chiziluaga through, only for the ball to stop in the rain. That's what happens when Mia has players in front of him running. So, for example, against Egypt, the best combinations came when Mia and Maweja, I think it was the 34th minute, where Maweja and Mia played a 1-2, put Mia through. That's what we're looking for in such games, and you need to put players on the field who can do it. Mia played surprisingly more offensive than expected, but the players he picked couldn't execute the game plan. So I fault him, 1, for the defensive chaos, but 2 also for not having the courage to pick the players who would suit the game plan. There's no reason why he couldn't pick 3 attacking players and have defensive players behind them, or even 4. And lastly, the persistence with Massa. It became quite clear, especially against the game against Ghana, that Mitchell was looking to play a game that relied on pace. Against Ghana, for example, we kept playing balls down the wings, trying to exploit space. That is not Massa's game. It was not Massa's game against Egypt, and certainly against Mali, it would not have been his game had he played. So why did he persist with him? The attacking trio he picked against Mali should have been the same attacking trio he picked against Egypt and against Ghana. That would have given us the defense a relief point. If they're under pressure, they can get the ball to Mia, and Mia can put in either Oloya or Luanga. And so those are the things that fought him. Number 1, lack of defensive organization. 2, failure to pick the right players. And 3, I think individually, the persistence with Massa, given that the game plan was not to Massa's strength. So the coach failed us. I think Uganda should have qualified from this group. We certainly had enough about us to avoid defeat against Egypt and Ghana, and to beat Mali. With 5 points, would have gone through, given the way that the results went. But that's my view of the tournament.
Okay, and so what now? I mean, we've now been to an AFCON tournament. As you've put it very well, there's evidence there that we have within our resources what it takes to qualify from such a tournament and go to the knockout stages. So going forward, what can we do to ensure that that's indeed what happens next time?
To qualify is simple enough. We can simply replicate what Mitchell did so well in the qualifying stages. Have a defensive solid team and have 2 or 3 attackers. Qualifying, I expect us to qualify for every AFCON from now on. Especially now because the players know they can make it. And truth be told, we qualified with in my opinion, fairly mediocre coach in Mitchell. The talent is there. We can qualify for African Cup of Nations. That in itself, in my opinion, should no longer be seen as an achievement. We don't need to change anything in Uganda football, qualify for AFCON. Now, if we're going to win AFCON, then I think that's where Buddy's comments come in, because we won't win it without better technical players. And so then the things Buddy has spoken over and over and over about here, funding for the game, honesty in administration, more coaches, all those things are required. So if I think now the question becomes, what do we want from the Cranes? If it's simply qualify for AFCON, we don't need to change anything. All we need to do is appoint a better coach than Mitchell, ensure that the good things they did such a defensive organization, the qualifying stages remain, see that going forward we play Mia with better attacking and faster players. We'll always qualify. That I have no doubts. But if we want to win, then the things Buddy spoke of have to be done. And we've spoken about them at length, so there's no need for me to repeat them, but that's my opinion.
Right now, with regards to the teams that have gone through in this tournament, obviously from our group there is Egypt and Ghana. Egypt are playing Morocco in the quarterfinals. DR Congo are playing Ghana. On the other side, you have Burkina Faso taking on Tunisia and Senegal taking on Cameroon. There are two teams there that we spoke of as favourites that didn't make it. That will be Algeria and the Ivory Coast. What are your thoughts on why perhaps they failed to qualify, and what does that say about those teams? If they fail to qualify, then maybe we as Ugandans shouldn't be so hard done by.
I don't think we should measure ourselves by the results of other teams, but by our performances against them. So we didn't play Ivory Coast or Algeria, and so we can't really measure how good the teams they are. And I don't read anything into their failure to qualify, because save for Egypt's remarkable 3-tournament winning streak, AFCON is actually a tournament where champions are like comets to the sky. You see them and they're gone. I think was it Nigeria that won in 2013 and fought to qualify for the next AFCON? Zambia, the same thing. This is actually a pattern in AFCON that it turns on really, if you can husband all your resources into one tournament and catch that catch that lightning bolt, you'll win it. There really is no pattern, in my opinion, to winning AFCON. This AFCON is not like, for example, the European Championships, where it's usually going to be the same 5 or 6 teams winning. There's a lot more volatility in African football, and in my opinion, that's what actually makes it a much better watch in terms of AFCON, because you really never know who's going to win the tournament before it starts. You can have favorites on paper. Buddy and I thought it would be Algeria because we looked at one of the top scorers in qualifying. They literally destroyed everyone in their path. They had Slimani and Mahrez, two of the most dangerous attacking players in Europe. How could they not go through? It happened. Then other teams that went in your radar, like Senegal, have turned out to be, in my opinion, the surprise performers of the tournament. So I don't read anything into Algeria and Ivory Coast when they perform. I just see it as the usual inconsistency of teams in this continent. The lack of structure in most African federations means that it's very difficult to create a system or a pattern that persists. If you just like to have the right players in the right condition, coach with the right ideas for the tournament, count yourself lucky, you win it. There's never a guarantee. In fact, it's more like that. No, it won't repeat 2 years from then.
From what you're saying, what I gather is that with these African nations, you don't have something like... you remember when Germany rebuilt, and then the Ozils, the Mullahs came through after a while, so they built for the long term, and they had a team that was quite strong for a long period of time. So based on what you're saying, Africans don't generally do that.
No African federation has in place a youth system that generates players, trains them, makes sure they know the basics of a technique. By and large, most African federations look to Europe to train their players. So in West Africa in particular, players leave in their mid-teenage years to go play in French clubs most often. And that's a pattern in North Africa, South Africa. Eastern Africa, indeed, we want the same patterns, just that until now, players have lacked exposure. And so no African federation actually has in place a training program. So the same things we complain about here with the FUFA are the same across the continent. And so again, that's in my opinion is the real reason why you have this volatility in African football. There's a lack of structure. And so there's no crop of players coming through. There's no system being taught. There's no pattern. Even the coaching is haphazard. So I'm not surprised to see this sort of outcome.
Yeah, and to that point, there was a good team, the Ivory Coast team in, I don't know whether it was the last World Cup or the other one, where you look at the starting 11 and they're very good, but there were individual players that were good, not necessarily as a team. So they didn't have a system of play as a nation. They didn't have a template. It was just a bunch of good players thrown together, and it actually showed in the tournament.
So now I may have overspoken because patterns of play are actually difficult to find in many countries, but certainly at least having a system in place that brings through young players, coaches, funds coaches training, make sure that the basics of technique are taught to players. Those things aren't really in place in the continent. And yes, you mentioned the Ivory Coast. Perfect example. In fact, that particular generation of players only really won when most of them had gone in. By 2015, most of them had stepped away. Bonaventure Kalou, Samuel Kalou was still around. Drogba, I think, had stepped down by that point from the Ivory Coast. So it was, but that's what tends to happen. But I think really, if you want to sum up African football, use the example of Egypt. They won the AFCON 3 tournaments running. Then they failed to qualify for the next 3 tournaments. That's a sort of random action that happens in our continent's football. And again, it's what makes AFCON so enjoyable. Really, you never know who's going to win it. And but I want to apologize to the viewers for trumpeting Algeria. I was proven wrong.
Yeah, I think Jurgen Klopp also needs to apologize to the Liverpool fans for doing the same thing. That's exactly what's happened to them. They've been knocked out by Southampton in the League Cup, which means Southampton will be taking on Manchester United at Wembley for the, is it called the Carling Cup these days?
No, it's the English Football League Cup.
EFL Cup,
EFL
yes,
Cup.
That's right. So, as you had predicted, now I must tip my hat off to you. The wheels are slowly starting to come off Liverpool's vehicle, because over the last few weeks, it's been really, really highlighted about their defense being poor and conceding goals, and they're slowly sliding down the table. So them finishing in the top 4 is going to be a big challenge. And obviously in the league, at least, next they have Chelsea, I believe, and then Chelsea have play Arsenal. So that game for them, I think, is a must-win if they have any hope whatsoever of challenging for the title.
Yes, Dowdy. I'll take my lap of honor on predicting Liverpool's demise. And I think what's telling is that when I speak to Liverpool fans, they often cite to me 2 reasons for the current struggles. One is the absence of Matip, and 2 is the absence of Sadio Mane. Now, the absence of Matip, in my opinion, is not really an explanation, because the bad defensive record exists with him as well. And now it's interesting that they cite the absence of Sadio Mane as a break on the attack, because again, it goes to a key issue in this Liverpool team, which is a credit to Klopp. But when you look at this team, there really are no stars. This really is a triumph for the collective. And so when one player is removed, for it to make that much of a difference shows you generally speaking, the lack of depth in the Liverpool squad. So I think certainly the observation that Sadio Mane's absence makes a difference is true. I saw part of the game against Southampton, and you could certainly see that there wasn't much to frighten Southampton in terms of pacing behind. That's what Mane brings. Coutinho, Firmino don't really have that in their locker. But at the end of the day, what it really comes down to for this Liverpool team is the back. Mane was playing against Sunderland when they drew 2-2. He was playing against Bournemouth when they lost 4-3. He was playing against Burnley when they lost 2-0. And time and again, that's a pattern of this Liverpool team, that if a team can simply sit back and be defensively solid and let Liverpool have the ball, like Southampton did, they can rest assured they'll get chances. Liverpool will always offer you chances. Now, to their credit, against Southampton, they had 2 good chances, I would say. At least 2 good. And they both fell to the man they would expect to score, Sturridge. He missed both of them. So it's not as though they were completely out against Southampton. But the way they're set up with such a bad defense makes games like this decisive for them. That if they have an off day scoring, they're guaranteed to lose the game, because they can't keep clean sheets. And that's the real issue with a bad defense. It's that it makes your attacking play frenetic and chaotic, in that sense that you have to score. The attackers know that if they don't score, they will lose the game. Nothing's forever. The results will improve, but I don't think they'll go for the top 4. This defense is just lacking. He has now had 15 months to actually buy a decent defense. And decent defenses don't require stars. Just solid players who know what they're supposed to do. That after 15 months, if you see that sort of defensive chaos, it's on the coach.
Right, and your favourites, Manchester United, are still in 6th position. Well, you had your lap of honor. I think you should eat a little bit of humble pie, because according to the current trends, it looks difficult. And obviously, with every game that goes by, it automatically becomes harder. Do you still think they can pull it off?
3 years ago, Liverpool was 8 points off the top at 20 games played. they surged to the top. The team that was in top place was Arsenal. Within 10 games, Arsenal was 7 points behind Liverpool, so a 15-point swing. It's still possible for United to catch Chelsea. The problem for United is that they're not doing what you need to do. They are not beating the small teams. And so you'd mentioned earlier that Liverpool's title challenge turns with beat Chelsea now. Liverpool's title challenge turns on the fact that they felt that among the top 6, they have the worst record against the bottom 14. And we've seen this now. They've drawn to Sunderland and they've lost to Swansea at home. Both those games for Chelsea would be wins. That's the difference in Chelsea and Liverpool. Liverpool, when they play against the fellow top 6, they have the best record, second to none. But when they play against the other teams, their lack of defensive discipline catches up with them. Against the top teams, they're able to concentrate and squeeze out something that appears to be order, but that's an exception. The league is told over 38 games, playing 20 games twice, 19 teams twice, and if you don't have the basics, if you can't do the basics with your eyes closed, which this Liverpool cannot, you will get found out. And the same thing is true of United. And United's problem, funnily enough, is the reverse of Liverpool's. They don't score enough goals. United don't score enough goals.
But you say they had the best front 6.
They do. And that's on Mourinho. He has, in my opinion, the best front 6 in the league, but he's unable to generate the number of goals that you'd expect to see from such a team. United, correct me if I'm wrong, have the worst attack in the top 6. The team in 5th place, if you look at this league, United scored 33. The team that scored the fewest goals after them is Man City, who scored 43. That's a huge gap. Now, from City to the top scorers, Liverpool is just 8 goals at 51. But between City and United, it's 10 goals. So, having watched a number of United games now, it's hard to explain why that is, because you watch United play, and in some of those games, I think Burnley, Stoke, they had more than enough shots on target to run up a handsome win. But something about, I really can't say they were bad luck. I think United just have bad luck. It's strange to say, but I can't see anything they're not doing. Initially, it used to be that they played the game too slowly. So by the time they got into shooting positions, they were taking low probability shots. There were blocks in place, but now they play quickly, and yet the goals aren't going in. And so it's hard to put your finger on what it is about United. But that inability to score goals is their problem. I think perhaps the answer is be found in the fact that nobody has scored goals except Ibrahimovic. So Mata, Mkhitaryan, Pogba aren't really stepping up. Ibrahimovic has done his part, but nobody else in the team has. And I'm not sure what Mourinho can do about that, but that clearly is the problem in this team, the lack of a support goal scorer to Ibrahimovic.
Right. Another team that you said wouldn't finish in the top 4 was Tottenham.
No, they won't.
But they have the best, second best defense in the top 6. They've only conceded 16 goals. The only team with a better defensive record than them is Chelsea, that have conceded 15. So doesn't that evidence a team that is solid at the back, which therefore, if they can grind out a few 1-0 wins, can probably at least finish in the top 4?
And the reason why I say this about Spurs is what I've mentioned before. Spurs all too often play this league as though it is a cup tournament, which is that they will sack themselves up for the big games, then outperform. The best example was after they played City, when they went 6 games of the league without winning. They played no significant team in that period except, I think, Chelsea. But let me read to you Spurs' next results. We'll know if Spurs have changed what I've criticized them for, because their next league games are Sunderland away, Middlesbrough at home, Liverpool away, and they play Stoke at home. Now, you would expect from those 4 fixtures they should at least get 9. Maybe they lose to Liverpool. That's surprise me. But they should get 9 points from the rest. Those are not tough teams. Then they play Everton at home, Crystal Palace away, Southampton at home, Burnley away, Swansea away, Watford at home, Bournemouth at home, Leicester away. That until April the 29th, the only top 6 team Spurs plays is Arsenal. Now, if Spurs are going to win the title, they'll have to do what they haven't done this season, which is they'll have to actually produce consistent wins against the bottom 14. That they've not managed to do this season, but I'm always ready to be corrected. But that's why I don't think they'll finish in the top four, because I look at City, I look at United, and I think United, once their bad luck cures itself, will start beating teams. City, I'll remain steadfast in that conviction. City are just 2 or 3 consecutive wins away from blowing this league away. Because if you watch City play against Spurs, if you watch them play against Chelsea, against Arsenal, they're able to put those teams which are the top 3 teams in the league currently. Each of those 3 teams, if you'd ask them which have been their worst 45 minutes of the season, they'll all cite a half to play against City, because they were literally taken to the cleaners. The problem with City, they're not consistent, but it's an issue of belief in from the players, and I think just time with Guardiola. But City are getting close. United are also getting close, and when those 2 clicked, I think they'll produce the consistency of results that Spurs have not. Because Spurs have clicked. They've been under Pochettino now for 2 years. They know it's football, but they still can't produce the consistency of results required. Again, I take you back to last season. Just like last season, Spurs failed to beat teams they expected to beat. They went to West Ham away. They should have won. They failed to win. Leicester stayed at the top. If Spurs had won that game, they would have taken first place from Leicester. They then play West Ham at home. They draw when they know they need to win the game. That's the record of Spurs in the last 15 months under last 12 months under Pochettino, which is a failure to beat the small teams. Now, if they can change that, I'm willing to change my view, but nothing I've seen suggests Spurs can do that. But now we'll see. They have until April 29th to show that MJ is wrong. But I sincerely doubt it. I think Spurs will finish 5th, Liverpool will finish 6th, and United and City will finish in the top 4 along with Arsenal and Chelsea. That's my prediction.
Okay, coming up very shortly is the Champions League, and obviously one of the teams that was doing very well there from England were the champions, Leicester. I recall you telling us that they were doing well there because they actually focused on the Champions League, and with the off-season from the Champions League, they would focus on the Premier League and get the results we've known to see them produce. But to be fair, MJ, they haven't done that.
No, they have not.
How do you account for this? Because minus Kante, everyone else is there, including the manager. So what on earth is going on?
What on earth is going on? First, I was wrong. I didn't expect them to all of a sudden put together a 6-game winning run, but I did think they'd be able to get 5 wins by the time the Champions League came around. But that's clearly not going to happen. I had them pegged to be on 30 points. They're still on 21. I think, truth be told, with Leicester, they probably punched above their weight last season. And what's happened now is the normal reaction when you exert yourself in any activity beyond your limits. You have that backlash. Your body, your mind just can't reach that peak you reached.
What happens when they put the stars on their badge? Suddenly their energy comes back. I mean, they're doing well in Europe.
No, Daudi, and I just ask you and the listeners to think of your own psychology. If you have been in a situation where you are pushing yourself relentlessly for a period of time, such that you even go beyond what you thought were your limits, when you finally achieve what you started to do, whether it's an exam, whether it's a presentation, whether it's securing a deal, usually there's that backlash that happens. You usually shut down for a few days. Now imagine you'd been in that zone for 8 months. That's what has happened to this team. And it's something we've seen before. If you think about every time we see a surprise title challenge in this league, what happens the season after? That team tends to disappear. Think of Liverpool, surprise title challenge at Benitez. 2009, it's 8 years ago now. What happened the next season? They finished 7th. Think of Liverpool, surprise title challenge at Rodgers. What happened the season after? They only lost Suarez. What happened the season after? They finished 8th. That it tends to be a pattern when a team outperforms its own expectations to that extent. Usually the season after, the players aren't able to generate it's almost as though they're bored from the future. I know it sounds quasi-spiritual, but that's something that can explain what you're saying. That in return for that exertion, it seems to be physically impossible or humanly impossible to maintain that level if it's not what your normal level is. That's again why I mentioned the issue, my criticism of Spurs, which is when they play games against top teams, they'll play at superhuman levels, but you can't keep that up. The normal reaction from that is that you won't go back to normal level. You fall below your normal level after that. So, for example, Leicester, I think we can all agree, is not a team that's 15th placed. You look at the players they have. But what's happening again is just like they went to... Normally you didn't think of them as a first-place team, but they were. Now they're suffering the reverse of that. I think you probably see the third season of Ranieri's regime, they'll finish in the top 10. Because after they had a season like this, the players will come back ready to... motivated to do better. But right now, most of them are thinking themselves, we've won the league. And I'd also add what they're focused on, like a laser, is the Champions League. That is the new thing. That is the thing motivating them. Ferguson once spoke about that. He said the hardest thing about winning is keeping the desire. Normally, after you win the first one, the desire tends to go. And he would spend a lot of time looking to motivate his players to keep winning. And a key aspect, I think, in such a thing is that you need players of the right kind. Players who have a hunger to win that does not lapse with time. And I think the Leicester players are not players like that. I mean, none of them had been in a winning team before this. So I think for them, winning that one thing probably sucked up probably all the of ambitions they had in the league for a good time to come. So in my opinion, Leicester's problem is mental. It's mental and it's psychological. It's not physical. The players can produce, as we've seen in the Champions League, but mentally they're not there. They don't think they will get relegated. But
are you sure? I mean, if they get back in the Champions League, they're only 4 points clear of the drop. Anything can happen.
No, they won't get relegated. Dowdy. Why don't you read the teams below Leicester?
Well, Middlesbrough, Swansea, who are on some sort of resurgence.
One game is not a resurgence, Dowdy.
Oh, come on. Well, they're doing well. It's 2 games. They played extremely well against Arsenal, and they replicated that form in the next game.
Did they win against Arsenal?
No, they did not win against us.
You don't survive relegation because you play well. You survive relegation by accumulating points. And my point is that Swansea beat Liverpool, but Liverpool is the team that all the teams against the bottom 14 look to beat. Burnley beat them. Bournemouth beat them. Liverpool is not a team that should fight any team in the bottom 14. The question for Swansea is not beating Liverpool. It's how will they perform against the other bottom 6. Well, and we'll find out. We'll find out soon enough.
We will. There's also Big Sam.
And
you yourself said it.
Big Sam won't get relegated, but Hull will go.
Sunderland is the only team at the very bottom that I see will definitely be relegated. But Hull City as well. Cover this with their new manager. They're doing quite well, MJ. I mean, you can't...
You judge a new manager after 6 games because the rule of thumb in the league is that a new manager is good for 6 games of good performances. After that, we all remember Mike Fallon when he joined at Hull, when he was promoted. Wow, everybody said, Mike Fallon is really going to turn the ship around. They won 7 points after 3 games. And now they are on 16. So... from game 3 up to game 22, in those 19 games that have passed, Hull have only picked up 9 more points. In 9 points out of 48, that's Hull.
Yeah,
Close to half of Hull's points were picked up in their first 3 games. We need to understand the sort of team we're dealing. This is a team that has just lost probably one of their best midfielders, Ryan Mason, to injury. He's out till next year. This is not, they have no money to add new players. This is not a team, Dowdy, that is set for survival.
It's just 5 points behind Leicester. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5 points is a chasm in the relegation battle. Because you have to remember, these teams are not going to pick up points. It's not like Arsenal and Chelsea who expect to win games. For these teams, the wins come once in a blue moon. So to cover 5 points, he's probably he needs to pick up 5 draws. That's what he's thinking about. Now, how's he going to pick? This is a team, Dowdy, that has won 4 games all season. Of the 22 games they played this season, they've lost 14. Think about that. This team has lost close to 70% of the games they played this season. Now, is this a team that you're really looking at and magically creating 5 points? Creating a 5-point gap? No. Hull is going. I fear for Sunderland. I think they might have finally met their match here. So Hull and Sunderland and Swansea will go. Swansea won't make it. That's my call right now. Swansea won't make it.
Okay.
Oh, Dowdy, let's put you on the spot. Who are those bottom 3 who go?
Definitely Sunderland.
Mm-hmm.
As much as it hurts me, I think Crystal Palace won't make it, to be honest. I think this Big Sam is going to finally be found out for the very first time. As well as, for the sake of argument, let me just throw in Swansea. So those will be my 3. Swansea, Crystal Palace and Sunderland.
You think Hull's going to survive?
Absolutely. Based on the way they're performing right now, I fancy them. I really do.
Yeah, hope is a great deceiver. So I think you're deceiving yourself, Dowdy. But because I saw that game when they played against Chelsea. Don't get me wrong, they performed well, but they lost. And this is a team that is already losing players. Like the players are dropping like flies from a really small squad. The prospects for victory, the prospects of survival are so thin. They're actually invisible, in my opinion. No matter what this guy does, you can't make gold out of stone. He has stones right now.
He has time as well.
No, he doesn't.
Lots of games there, 26 games.
He has 16 games left. That's not a lot of time.
Oh, sorry, 16.
Yeah, 16 games. Normally the struggle starts with 10 games to go. So he's got 6 games to pull himself clear. He's not going to pull himself clear in 6 games. So he's going to be there right at the bitter last.
Okay. Right, well, I guess we'll have to leave it at that for this week's episode of Full-Time Banter. Okay, so with regards to the African Cup of Nations, the next time we have this podcast, we'll analyze the 2 best teams on the continent this year, 2017.
Allegedly.
Well, they are. I mean, they're in the final of the African Cup of Nations, so they are the 2 best teams on the continent. Isn't that the measure, AFCON?
Say so.
We don't use the FIFA rankings. We use AFCON to determine who the best is.
If you say so, Dowdy. Okay.
Right, well, MJ, thank you so much, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please do join us next week for another episode of Full-Time Banter.